Hello, and welcome to How to Sell a House in Central PA, an insider's guide to selling a home in the greater Harrisburg area. I'm Derek Bixler, experienced real estate professional and educator in Central PA, and I want to inform and empower home sellers by providing inside tips and strategies to help them sell their homes for more money, thereby keeping Central PA strong for everyone. In this podcast, we'll provide important information for home sellers through quick tips, interviews with related local professionals, and access to free tools and resources. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show or have an idea for a guest, please message us at howtosellahouse.org. That's howtosellahouse.org, or on our Facebook page. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to episode 1. Pretty excited. Just got done recording the first episode with John Staz of Enviroquest. He is a great inspector in the area. He's been doing it for a long time. I've used his company a million times. Highly recommend. There's some great info. Towards the middle, the end is the meat and potatoes of the episode. At the beginning, a little info on John and where he came from and about the company and everything. That's good too. Pretty happy about how this all turned out. I was kind of, first time, so I was a little nervous about how it would go, but other than me being super nasally, it went pretty well. That is what it is, I guess. I have allergies, so get over it. That's how my voice is. I'm not just sick, that's how it is. So anyway, the length ended up pretty well. Overall, it was a great time for the first time, I think. I hope everybody likes it. Pretty happy about it. Upcoming episodes, we have a stager coming up, we'll have an appraiser coming up, a photographer. I'm also going to take probably going to take the video tips, which are pretty short, 1 minute or 1 to 2 minutes each. Probably going to take about 10 of those at once and put them out as podcast episodes as well, so take a look out for that. Maybe put out the about episode that I did for the video How to Sell a House podcast.org, my video podcast, the about section. I'll probably put that out as an episode as well. So listen to whatever you want to listen to. Thanks for listening, and here you go. John Staz, Enviroquest. And bear with me a little bit.
Yeah, it's okay.
It'll be all good. Hey everyone, first episode. We're recording here in 360 on my video camera. I don't know if it's going to work. We're recording in my office this time. In the future, we'll probably record in a house or something a little bit more visually appealing. Episode 1 here, I'm here with John Staz of Enviroquest. John is the owner, and do you inspect much anymore?
Yeah, I still do. I like to keep my hands in it, so I still do quite a few inspections.
And you came from one coming here, maybe? Yeah?
Yeah. Earlier today, I did an inspection the other side of Harrisburg. It was like a 4,000 square foot home, about 15 years old.
It's pretty big.
Yeah. It was a nice big home with finished basement, had an in-law suite. So.
How long did you say? A couple hours?
Yeah, it took about 3 hours.
3 hours.
Inspect, yeah.
Yeah. And a little townhome, probably an hour and a half, maybe, something like that?
I find the average time is about 2.5 hours.
Okay.
So I find to do a thorough job, usually takes about 2.5 hours.
Awesome.
And you don't want to, you want to move quickly through it, but do a thorough job. So you got to keep moving, and usually to do everything needed to do it properly, I find it usually takes right about 2.5 hours.
Yeah. That's good. That's why I don't stick around for the whole thing usually. I leave the client there with you for the whole time, and then I check back in.
Yeah.
Plus, I don't want to be tempted to put my 2 cents in either. It can be dangerous sometimes.
Yeah, I hear a lot of agents say that the brokers tell you to not come to the inspection because then the buyer might get confused over things that were said. Did it come from you, the agent, or from the inspector? Right,
exactly. And you're the pro in that instance, and I don't want to step on toes, number one, and number two, you're the expert. I don't know. I know enough to be dangerous about things, and I don't want to put anything in their head and have them proceed with something that they should or shouldn't. because of something I said.
It's I don't mind if the seller or the agent is there, although usually it's pretty much protocol, I guess, to say to the seller not be there and for the agent not to be there. I try to train our inspectors to try to take a lead in the inspection, and that way you captivate the buyer so that they are paying attention. They're going around with you, to control the inspection, take a lead, and that way it helps them to get the most out of the inspection because they're involved and engaged with the inspector.
Yeah, totally. So let's backtrack a little bit. And just tell us a little bit where you came from. Are you from Central PA? How'd you get in the business? How'd you grow up? Who are your parents? Whatever you want to tell us about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a small business owner, but my parents had a small business as well. And from this area, from the local area, Camp Hill, I always had an interest in construction and real estate with jobs, summer jobs in high school. So I figured, hey, going to college, major in finance, for the
finance.
So completely went in a different direction. I majored in finance, and so I, coming out of college, okay, well, I guess I got to get a job here, and I didn't really want to sit. This is in the late '80s. I knew, hey, I don't want to be calling the people up at dinner time, trying to sell them stocks and things. Okay, so what are my options? It was right around the time the stock market.
You don't want to do what I have to do half the time.
Make cold calls. I just didn't want to do that. But I like working with people. So coincidentally, the college I went to, a lot of my roommates were in safety science. And, I always had an interest in science. And, trying to find a job in finance right after the stock market crashed, after the late 87 stock market crash. And some of my roommates that found jobs easily in the Washington, D.C. area, they said, hey, our company's booming. Just come down here. If you're good at math, come down here to – it was an environmental consulting company, and they were doing like air monitoring for asbestos removal.
Gotcha.
And they did that, and they did underground storage tank removal. And it's kind of interesting. When I got to the company, I overheard one of the owners talking about they had sent somebody to training, and the person failed the test at the end of their training. So they paid for the training, and then the person failed the test. And I heard him complaining about that.
Yeah.
So obviously, with this field, being a finance major, I needed some training. So I had it in my head right away, I got to ace the test. So I was out of town at they sent me away to a class. It was like a 3 or 4 day class, and I paid attention, I studied it, and so I aced the test. So after that, then I realized that these trainings, that was not just only good for me, but it was good for the company. Then they have this person with this certification. So they started sending me to a lot of trainings because they saw that I was acing the test. So you got
a lot of free training.
Yeah, I got a lot of free training.
Awesome.
So some of the things that we're talking about here, asbestos microscopy, asbestos contractor.
I don't even know what the second word means.
well, I was trained to take an air sample on an asbestos removal site and then analyze the sample under a microscope to calculate the airborne concentration.
Wow.
For asbestos. So for that job, a building owner getting asbestos removal, they'd hire us as consultants to make sure that the contractor was doing their job properly containing the asbestos, protecting their workers to reduce their liability. It was like a third party watchdog, to make sure their building wasn't going to get contaminated. So that was kind of an interesting.
Cool. So that's where the name kind of came from for your company.
Well, actually, it's a funny story how I came up with the name, but I'll tell you the story.
Yeah. I wanna hear.
So I worked for the environmental consulting company. I worked for a couple different companies in sales for companies that did underground storage tank removal because I had all these certifications. So I worked in a couple different fields, a couple different companies. Then I met a guy who owned a water lab, and he had a radon mitigation and home inspection company. And he found out that I had experience with underground storage tanks, and he said, well, I want to get into that business. So he hired me, and I worked with him doing underground storage tank consulting, removal, doing closures, filling out the paperwork.
Yeah. Is that mostly commercial stuff or oil with houses too, oil tanks?
It was mostly commercial. It was during the late 80s, Pennsylvania passed a regulation, or it might, federal, and PA particularly, that certain categories of registered underground storage tanks had to be either tested to show that they weren't leaking or replaced. So there was time deadlines, and there was a huge process of checking all these old tanks, because I guess the DEP realized the amount of contamination that was existing, and this was a huge problem. So with this company, we were just doing a ton of this work. We had a contract with Unimart and Getty Oil, so I was traveling around the state. And the owner of this company that I worked for was so busy. He said, John, we're so busy with this. He was handling the lab side. He basically owned two companies. And he said, John, I need you to totally manage the environmental side, which was the home inspections, the radon mitigation. So I was.
So that was the first chance managing or kind of managing an inspection company.
Yeah. His the work truck for the radon mitigation came back with some bullet holes in it, and he's like, okay, John, we need new radon installers. That was my first task, was to hire people, because he had a couple of dubious employees that he wanted to get rid of or having problems with. I was coming into the tail end.
So it wasn't a neighborhood. It
wasn't a neighborhood thing. It was just the employees that he had weren't taking proper care of the van via bullet holes in it. It was a good symptom. So.
So what led you from that to working for yourself?
Well, I was managing the company, and my boss came to me one day, and he said, well, the company is doing really, really well. And he said, well, I have it up for sale. And he said, well, I'd like to sell it to you. And he said he would finance a certain amount. And so we were sort of working on this deal. Then one day, and I was going to go forward with purchasing the company, and he was going to finance, 2/3 of it or something to that effect. But what happened was the owner came to me one day and said, John, you'll never believe this, but I got a full price offer for my company, which was way more, like 30% more than what he was going to sell it to me for.
Yeah.
I said, hey, I don't blame you.
Did he give you first right? You could buy it there for the same price?
No, he was just going to sell it to this guy because he was offering so much money. So the company transferred hands, and then the new owner came in and basically was sort of taking over my job. And I saw the writing on the wall, and I was like, what do I do? People were calling me like, hey, John, you're not there anymore. We need this. We're going to call you. So I just basically it evolved into me starting my company. And what I did was, with the certifications that I had from the environmental company, I went to some local labs that did, the asbestos consulting.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, if you get too much work for your employees to handle, I'll work as a subcontractor. So I had 3 or 4 labs that I was.
Yeah, that's an awesome way to get started.
Yeah, so that's how I got started. I had Enviroquest just starting in my apartment with no money, just from scratch.
Yeah, just you, or
it was just me.
Yeah.
It was just basically, and going back to the funny story of how I got the name Enviroquest. I originally, when I started the company, I thought that I was going to be doing underground storage tank work. I thought that was. That's what I had been doing, spent most of my time with. And so I think I had a couple names like Environmental Solutions, and I had like 3 or 4 names, and I kept going to the Bureau of Corporations, and it's like,
yes.
Oh, okay, here, I got the name, I got the logo, I'm all set, and it's like, oh, it's taken.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this one's taken. And so I was just doodling, and I somehow just came up with Enviroquest, and I checked that, and it wasn't taken. And so I just, okay, well, that's it.
Yeah, I know how that is, especially with websites and whatnot. You have to and then you look for .net or .org, and then you have to come up with some whole other thing. Yeah. I like the name. It's good.
Oh, well, thanks.
Yeah. And I'm a tree hugger kind of, so anything with the word Envira, anything in it is good for me. So let's get down into nitty gritty. What, for everybody out there, where home sellers listening to this mostly, it could be anybody, but it's focused for how to sell a house. What do you think the most common issue that you see in our area come up during inspections? I know the first thing that comes to my mind would be radon. I think everybody should just test before they even sell and just go ahead and put a mitigation system in. But what do you find is the most common issue you come across, or maybe the worst one, or whatever?
Sure. Like you mentioned, it is a high radon area. But as far as the whole house inspection, when you're doing a home inspection, I would say, and I'm sure most inspectors will agree with you, the most common home inspection item that comes up, and it usually ends up in the summary of a lot of reports, because although it's a small item, it can be considered a fire hazard, which is a double tapped or a double lugged breaker, where you have the two wires on the one screw. I mean, we probably find those in maybe 35 or 40% of houses we inspect. It's easily fixed, and it's minor as far as cost wise of the repair, but it's pretty common.
Is that usually in older house? I would guess no brand new house is going to have that, but it's usually like a mid-century or older or so?
It lends itself to the older houses because, number one, an older house is going to have maybe a panel, and maybe they put an addition on, so they need more space. So instead of getting a bigger panel, maybe they'll crowd the electric panel. So it's something that's done usually associated with the electric panel being crowded, or somebody, a homeowner doing, we call it homeowner wiring.
Right. Yeah, nobody likes to see that. Yeah, we don't like do-it-yourself anything for the most part. If we fix anything at our house, I'd rather pay somebody twice as much to do it right, so that when I sell the house, I can say, here's the paper, this is who did it, there's a warranty, they did it correctly, and if anything's wrong, I can go back to them.
Yeah, sadly, I always say you can't beat a man in his own trade. There's some exceptions to that rule. You find, a beautiful job done. People like, hey, we went on to Google and we went on to YouTube and found a video and we watched it and we did this. You do see some exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, you spend less. You think to yourself, hey, I'm going to pay more hiring a professional, but in the long run, time is valuable, and somebody that does something every day. We find that with our radon installers, they do it every day, day in and day out, and they start to get good at it.
Yeah, and they bang them out quick now. And it used to be a couple grand for a radon system, I think, back for a little while ago. Now it's 8, 9, 1,000.
Yeah, it's good for the consumer. The prices have come down. There's a collective knowledge base for radon mitigation, so there's more information as far as how to do it more efficiently. The fan technologies has come along so that there's less guesswork and there's more predictability with the fan performance. For example, we carry 3 or 4 different size fans on our truck, and then based on the soil type, that way we have whatever fan is needed, on our truck based on the soil type.
Sure. And sometimes you have to pull from multiple spots in the basement for radon systems. Is that sometimes what triggers having to pull from 2 spots?
What triggers that?
Or multiple.
Usually a newer house that has a good layer of stone that's going to have good communication under the slab. A lot of times you'll have one suction point and you can pull a large area. When you run into older homes, usually before, let's say, 1975, they didn't put as much stone. Or maybe there's compacted clay where you're using a higher suction fan and you're pulling onto clay, or maybe damp clay.
Yeah.
So then your suction field is not going to be big, and that increases the chance that you need multiple suction points.
Gotcha. So we mentioned electrical and GFCI outlets. Those get called all the time if you don't have the breaker switches. For people that don't know what you're talking about, by any water source, right?
Yeah,
and that's common because back in the day that wasn't code, and now you have to have one pretty much anything that's near a water source.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned that. So the GFI within like 6 feet of water usage. It's
I said GFCI.
or-
GFI?
or-
Which is, you know better
it's-
than me.
Yeah, GFCI.
Are they the same thing?
Yeah, they're the same
Okay.
thing. But so within 6 feet of water usage, so outside bathrooms, it can be on the device. Sometimes you have a circuit, a GFCI circuit, where there's one device that controls multiple outlets. Sometimes it can be on the service panel where.
Yeah, we have one in our house. There's a breaker in the basement that goes then to a couple different bathrooms, I think is where it goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
In an older house, it's cheaper to do that, right, than to do whatever the alternative was, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. We try to give people some education when we're doing the home inspections, and one of the things that I often tell people is, a house that's built in 2010 is not going to be up to the current electric code.
Right.
So,
right.
we follow the ASHI standard.
And that's pretty recent.
Yeah. So the codes are always changing, especially, the electrical code. So, we're not per se doing the inspection to see if it's up to the current code, because then almost every house you'd have to rip out the whole electrical system. But there's a lot of, with the American Society of Home Inspectors standard, is a lot of overlap. We're looking for things that would jeopardize the health and safety of the occupants, fire hazards, things that could possibly cause a fire. I often say to people, there's a very small chance of a fire with this defect, but you don't want a small chance of a fire in your home.
Right, no, never. Yeah.
So,
I want a 0 chance of fire.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. Hey everyone, we're always on the lookout for good content for the podcast and our website. If you have any ideas for guests, any questions we could answer, or any ideas for topics, please go to howtosellahouse.org. That's howtosellahouse.org, and drop us a message there. Or you can find us on our Facebook page. Thanks in advance for your input. It's much appreciated. Yeah, and that's a good point. We could mention maybe you're not looking for cosmetic things. You're not going to note on there chipping paint or carpet stained. You don't know. They have to disclose sometimes carpet defects, sellers do, but you're not looking for those things, so that the sellers know that buyers are going to be, the inspections are meant for habitability issues. When they move in, they've got to have hot water and everything run, toilets flush, heat and air work, windows open and close, doors work, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. The cosmetic issues, sometimes we point them out, and sometimes people do make an issue, but if you put too many of them in the home inspection report, then it'll clutter up the report to where the person reading the report, you want them to be able to distinguish between a serious item or a material defect, they call it in the home inspection law, or in the standard. So you want to be able to distinguish between something cosmetic and a material defect, something that's important. So sometimes it's taken noted, or point this out, but the report should really clarify what's serious and what's not.
Yeah. And in the report John's mentioning is you get this after you do an inspection, you get this nice big thick report of everything that was found, and then usually at the beginning you're going to have a summary, a defect summary basically, and then each one is going to be categorized as basically low importance to high importance. Or life safety versus just a smaller issue.
Yeah, generally with a home inspection, like things that would go in the summary would be material defects, or things that are health and safety issues, or things that would be expensive to repair, such as, if the roof needed to be replaced or something like that.
Yeah.
And then,
no, please no.
Yeah. So I find we teach our inspectors, there's a lot of things maybe that they don't necessarily, they're not specifically correct, but they're not specifically causing a problem. So those things are just noted.
And that's why it's important for buyers to be there. Even though the agent isn't, the buyer needs to be there for the entire thing, hopefully, because sometimes things could be noted in the report and look major. But if you were there and with the inspector, you would say, look, I have to put this in. It's going to look major, and I got to mark it as life safety or whatever, or hazard, but it's a $3 fix. You don't need to make a big deal of it if it's going to blow up the deal or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of things are gray, like an area of gray. Like this isn't quite correct, but it'd be really tough to fix, but it's not causing a problem. So I'm going to point it out to you, but do you need to fix it? You're going to know about it, but I don't even know how you would fix it. There are things like that.
Right, and then you call in an expert. If there's a big electrical issue, you're going to call an electrician probably, or at least for the sellers listening. Basically, your buyer's going to do their inspections. They're going to do a general inspection, which is the big thick report, which is general everything, and then they're going to do a radon test 9 times out of 10 in PA, and then they're going to do a wood insect infestation test. Usually, the wood is fine. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
Pun intended. Then the radon, that's kind of a 50-50 in PA. If you're above a certain level, you pretty much have to put a mitigation system in. Somebody does, because nobody's going to buy a house that's high, especially if they're going to have kids.
Yeah.
And they run about $500 for the buyer. Once the buyer gets all their reports back, then their agent or them by themselves will sit down, look at the reports, and prioritize, I guess, which ones they want to ask for and which ones are okay. Typically, a buyer's not going to ask for every single thing on a report because that just looks like they're asking for too much. And if there's some big dollar items on there, everybody's on a budget, and sellers are on a budget too. So you want to be reasonable. And if sometimes those outlets, they're safety things, but sometimes you can let those go because you can go buy an outlet for $5 or something. So hopefully, the buyer's agent can manage the buyer's expectations on what they expect to be done, because typically you're not just going to get the report back and say, we want every single thing on here fixed. Most sellers are going to say, pound sand, go find someone else. But even if you're going to ask for most of the things, it's probably good to weed out a couple so it doesn't look like you're asking for the moon. But if you're a seller and you get a report and they're asking for every single thing, I'd tell them to pound sand. So, that's who's listening to here. So for the sellers, if somebody's asking for every single thing, radon, I would just do. That's a non-negotiable. You got to do it. And once you know about it, you have to tell everybody else about it. And that's another thing I can mention here. For the sellers, once somebody does a home inspection and you then find out about some issues, if the deal then falls apart, about those issues. You now have to disclose those to every buyer looking at the house or making an offer. So you're pretty much going to have to fix most of those things you found out about anyway. You might be able to push back and not fix all the things that they asked for, so that you can save a little bit of money. But in the long run, you're pretty much going to have to do it. And radon's a non-negotiable with most buyers. You kind of have to do it. Anybody with kids is not going to do it for sure. So that's good stuff.
Yeah, like you said, reasonable. I tell people, start thinking about, there might be things that you want to have control over the repair. Maybe you want to upgrade and put a nicer one, because if you ask the seller to fix this, they're going to do it the cheapest way possible. So maybe that's something. And like you said, reasonable. If you go to a seller and say, hey, I'll fix this, this, and this, but if you could just fix this,
right,
that's reasonable.
Yeah, for sure. So we talked about electrical. Radon's a big one. Anything else? Plumbing, obviously, roofs, that kind of stuff are big ones. But I think the radon is probably the most common, and then minor to major electrical issues are mostly. And then little drips under sinks and that kind of thing that usually don't amount to too much. And then what's the craziest thing you've ever come across? Dead bodies. I've seen grow stations in basements sometimes. I won't get into what that was for. Anything crazy you've ever seen on the job, or worst house ever, or anything?
Yeah, the craziest thing I've ever seen. We do see a lot of crazy things on a regular basis, but I was inspecting, it was like a hoarder house. And it was just unbelievable. I remember taking pictures of it and sending it to our other inspectors. It's just so incredible and so gross. Just never seen anything like it. It was a hoarder. It wasn't just like a hoarder, like, oh, they've been a hoarder for a little while, they have this disorder, this was like hoarder, full, gone out, like left alone
Could be on
to
the TV
hoard
show
for years and years until they left, and now the bank's left with this house.
Dead cats in the piles.
Oh yeah, there were skeletons of
Are you
rodents.
really?
Yeah, there was.
You saw?
Yeah. That's why I was taking pictures and sending to our other inspectors.
It smelled. Was it a foreclosure? What was it? Was it a flipper buying the place or what?
Yeah. It was like an investor / flipper. Like, I'm not sure if he went through the deal, but it was just horrible. This house.
Huh. It was probably a good deal.
Yeah. I'm sure after he saw my report, it became an even better deal for him. So.
Yeah.
Because we found a lot of stuff there, but it was just in horrible shape.
Yeah. Lesson for sellers: declutter, get everything out. That's the number one staging tip. If you need one thing, get it. You're going to move out. Declutter, get stuff out. This person probably.
Yeah, nothing was
there. It wasn't
was
going to
there.
happen. They were beyond the point. Yeah,
10 or 15 years worth of stuff was there.
Yeah. So, and then I had top 3 things home sellers could do to make their home more appealing to buyers. I think I could boil that down to one thing really when it comes to inspections is just do them ahead of time. Nobody wants to ever do them ahead of time. A lot of agents do them. When we just sold our house, I just did it ahead of time.
Yeah, it's...
And I'll preface it, every inspector is going to find different things. Mostly they're going to find most of the same things, but one inspector might find things that the next one won't. So you run the risk of spending money, fixing all these things, and then the buyers still find a couple things, but you've still fixed all the major things. If they do find anything extra, it's probably going to be minor, and it just gives you the peace of mind. Anybody looking at the house, you say, here, we got an inspection, and we fixed every single thing on that list, and it just gives buyers a peace of mind that you care about the house and you want to give somebody a good house.
Yeah, I'd say for sure that's good advice. Not to, I've had people, I think one of the principals of your company called me and said, hey, should I get a pre-inspection? And I just said, hey, you've been in the business, your house is in good shape. You might not need to. On the other hand, if somebody who's not in the real estate or home inspection or construction business and they really don't know, there might be problems lurking there. They've been in there a long time. Maybe for them it's good, like you said, get the things fixed before you have a potential buyer, because the longer that list is on the home inspection, the less a buyer could get discouraged by seeing that many things. And a lot of the things might be minor, and you can prevent all that and make your house more conducive to a sale by just fixing those things prior to the pre-purchase inspection by your potential buyer.
Yeah, for sure. And especially if it's an older house, there are gonna be things wrong with it. If it's 10, 20, 30, a 1920s house in Lemoyne or something, there are going to be things wrong with it, even if it was completely renovated in 1996 or something like that. There are going to be things wrong with it.
Yeah.
So just get a jump on it. Nobody ever does, but you try to get people to, but nobody ever wants to.
Yeah, you want the home inspector to say, hey, this place is in good shape. And we train our home inspectors because people frequently ask, during the inspection, one of the first things they say is, how's everything going? Does it look good? And we sort of break it down to, so one of the main things is we look at the level of maintenance, because you're going to buy this house. You're going to have things that break moving forward. You're going to have maintenance.
Sure.
But you don't want to buy a house that has, maintenance going forward plus 5 years of deferred maintenance that you have to fix.
Move
in. So that definitely, getting a house to a condition where maintenance issues have been addressed, change your filters, get that pre-purchase home inspection, fix the things on the list, and that'll definitely help you, especially in an older house, like you said.
Yeah, that's a good point. With any house, maintenance is key. Maintain it. Get your HVAC service every single year. Check your radon system. Make sure it's working. Make sure your roof is up to date, and just maintain things as you go so you won't have problems later. And every buyer, like I said, they're all going to do inspections. Unless it's an investor and you're giving it to them for some steal price and they say, I don't need to do inspections, every single buyer is going to do inspections. So you might as well just get a jump on it. So with what you do, are there any misconceptions that sellers have about what you do you think, or the general public?
Yeah, sometimes people think that, they don't realize that we're following a standard, and that standard is the ASHI standard, and it's designed to reduce the possibility of us missing a major defect. But we're going through all of the systems of the home in like 2 hours. So a lot of people sometimes have a misconception about, they'll call us like a year later, hey, my plumbing's dripping or something. It's just like, I think you'd be better served by calling a plumber, so.
Yeah, for sure.
But, just I think a good thing for people to do is just read the ASHI standard, and that shows you what's looked at, what's not, and then that way it gives you a realistic picture. The home inspection is to give you an overview, and, the home inspections are good for sifting out major defects. But is your sink going to drip, the week after you move in? Is your water heater going to leak? It could. We're there. It's a snapshot of the day we were there.
Sure.
And
you can't find everything.
I believe it's a valuable service, but it is what it is. And most people do understand that, but you get some people, that have.
And you know a little bit about a lot, kind of. So you're looking for major things that stick out, and then people should, if there's electrical, have an electrician fix it, or a plumber, or whoever the expert is. And sometimes the expert will come and say, oh, it's not even an issue. Well, that's great, because I'd rather the inspector bring it up and it be a non-issue than for him not to bring it up, and then it's an issue later after you settle, and then they're trying to sue the sellers or so. You never know. So it's good to get everything out in the open and get it addressed.
Yeah, that's why I like the American Society of Home Inspectors. Now, most of the standards...
and there are standards. It's not, just so the sellers know, you're not just somebody that said, I want to inspect homes, and you're an ex-contractor or something, and you think you know about homes, and you're just picking things out of the sky that you think are wrong. This is all a standard and a way of practice. Yeah,
it is standardized. There's a methodology, and things that are checked, things that are not checked, the degree to which things are checked. It's all spelled out. And one of the things I do like about the American Society of Home Inspectors is the thoroughness of their training and the ethical component to the training that they have for ASHI. So
that's awesome. Yeah, and we do a lot of ethical training in our profession too, and it's important.
Yeah, I agree.
So I like to, every time we have a guest on, we're going to have them bring a little giveaway for everybody at home, a PDF you can download, tips to get your house ready to sell, or a guide, or whatever we can. So I've asked everybody to bring one. So I'm going to ask you now what you bring for everybody, and we'll put a link to the website then, and I'll get everybody to your website or wherever the thing is, or however we have to do it.
Yeah, I have some... hopefully I didn't come too empty-handed, but I do have some tips on things on my website, so I'll get you a link to that. Yeah.
I'll put the link on howtosellahouse.org. You can go to just the homepage there, and under the episode, I'll have a link to EnviroQuest website, and it's evqharrisburg.com, evqharrisburg.com, which actually brings us to the end. I have here on my itinerary anyway to plug whatever you want to plug, so we'll get your website out there for sure. evqharrisburg.com is EnviroQuest, and you can plug whatever else you want to plug, anything special, any promotions going on, anything you want to say for 2018.
Sure, yeah, we also have a Facebook page. We have some valuable information on there too.
Great.
EnviroQuest Facebook. So.
Yeah, find them there. Usually, I like Facebook pages a little bit more sometimes because you see some real life stuff here and there, and it's more up to date than a website's pretty much you make it and then it sits there the same way for a long time. Which I think, did you update yours?
Yeah, we did update.
It looks better than the last time I looked at it.
Okay, thanks.
It looks great. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Is it WordPress?
Actually, I upgraded it because of our conversation
really?
A few weeks ago.
I noticed it. I looked at it. That's funny. It looks great now.
Oh,
I love it. Yeah. I bet it helps.
What happens is you get a website, it's like, oh, this is state of the art, but then stuff expires, like all the components
6 months
expire.
from then.
Yeah. So ours was a couple years old, and you pointed that out to me. Thanks, and I upgraded it.
Yeah, it looks awesome.
Oh,
that's great.
Man.
I'm glad I could help. All right, so everybody go to evqharrisburg.com. What's the phone number, too? 233, you do it.
Yeah, it's 717-233-6144.
So one more time.
717-233-6144.
And call John, and you might not get John, but all his inspectors are awesome and just as good as he is, and John even trains some of the inspectors that work for some of the other companies in the area. We won't say names or anything. So John and all his people know exactly what they're doing. They also install the radon systems, which most places don't. Sometimes if a buyer of mine chooses to do inspections with a different company and they need a radon mitigation system, I'm still calling John because I need to get it in there. And the guys are fast and good, and they always get it done before settlement or after settlement if it has to be then, or whatever the case may be. So check them out. Use them for your next inspection. Anything else you want to say, John? This went pretty good, right?
Yeah,
you were worried we couldn't get
thanks.
30 minutes in, and we're at 40 some. So
wow.
yeah, easy.
Yeah. Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah,
for having me
and
on.
first episode, I was kind of nervous too. So thanks everybody for listening. Like I said, go to howtosellahouse.org for all the video tips and everything, and to see the other, get access to the podcast and everything. Follow us on Facebook as well, Instagram, Twitter, blah, blah, blah. If you have any ideas for any future podcasts or guests or questions or anything, let us know. And we'll see you next time. See ya. Thanks for listening. We hope you got some good, actionable information out of the show that you can go use today to sell your home for the most money possible. More tips and strategies at howtosellahouse.org. That's howtosellahouse.org. If you have any questions or ideas for guests or topics, you can message us on Facebook, or again, find us at howtosellahouse.org. Thanks again for listening, and have an awesome day.